The immense, ancient silence of the Rocky Mountain foothills was the only thing Deputy Sheriff Rebecca Hayes trusted anymore. It wasn't merely the absence of sound. It was a physical force, a deep, pervasive quiet that felt like the Colorado high country holding its breath. This remote corner of rural Colorado was a realm of colossal old-growth aspen groves and ancient ponderosa pines, their dense boughs perpetually shrouded in a pine-scented, atmospheric fog that diffused the weak morning sun into an ethereal, pale glow. The wilderness tracks she patrolled were less roads and more scars on the landscape, unforgiving, deeply rutted jeep trails of sharp granite shale and slick, wet earth. Becca, a former decorated Denver Metro homicide detective, had exiled herself here 6 months prior. The relentless, suffocating chaos of the city had become unbearable after the tragic, brutal, and still unsolved line-of-duty death of her partner, Detective Jace Riley. The memory played on a loop, the smell of rain-soaked concrete, the flicker of neon on the perp's face, the horrifying, final silence. Out here, she sought a geographical cure for a psychological wound, retreating into a solitary rural patrol duty where the only demands were routine maintenance and the occasional nuisance call concerning remote cabin trespassers or illegal wilderness dumping in the national forest. The unmoving, timeless indifference of the forest provided the perfect shield for her unhealed trauma. She drove her heavy-duty Ford Interceptor SUV patrol cruiser, its suspension groaning softly against the uneven terrain. She was Unit 7, a symbol of order in a world of Colorado wilderness, but inside, she was fiercely guarding the brittle fortress of her composure. She took a slow, deliberate sip of her lukewarm, bitter black coffee, the powerful, familiar taste grounding her to the present moment. Her hands, calloused and strong, gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles slightly white beneath the stiff, dark fabric of her institutional uniform cap. The radio beside her hissed with low, non-urgent static, the distant chatter of dispatch muffled by the mountain terrain's notorious radio dead zones. She ran a detailed mental inventory: fuel, weapon, first aid kit, and the unshakable sense of professional dread that always accompanies a profound quiet. She knew, based on years of walking complex crime scenes, that the deepest peace was often the terrifying precursor to the most significant life-altering incident. The tranquility was not merely disturbed, it was violently and instantaneously shattered. A sudden, jarring movement in her dusty rearview mirror was too substantial, too focused to be a trick of the light or a bird. It was a tiny German shepherd puppy, impossibly small and frail against the monolithic scale of the surrounding ancient pines. It was running with an impossible, manic determination, a desperate furry projectile defying the very laws of exhaustion and physics. This wasn't a playful chase, it was a full-out, panicked sprint, its small paws churning the earth, kicking up a rooster tail of fine dust on the gravel shoulder of the remote logging track. Its oversized ears flopped wildly, its tail was tucked stiffly low, but the single-minded purpose in its gait was mesmerizing, demanding, and profoundly unsettling. Becca's foot instinctively eased off the accelerator, letting the cruiser slow to a crawl. She watched in the mirror as the puppy maintained pace effortlessly, its mouth slightly open in an exhausted, focused pant. A hungry stray looking for a handout, her rational mind attempted to categorize. But the thought dissolved the instant she brought the cruiser to a complete stop, the sudden, loud hiss of pressurized air from the brakes echoing sharply in the absolute silence. The puppy didn't cautiously approach the vehicle. It sprinted straight to her door, its small body shaking violently, its intelligent amber-brown eyes wide and filled with a raw, undeniable urgency and human-like desperation. It barked once, a sharp, staccato command that resonated with authority, then immediately spun around, fixing its gaze on the intimidating, impenetrable wall of the thick Rocky Mountain woods. It looked back at Becca, then back at the trees, clearly establishing a vector, an undeniable instruction. Becca stared at the creature, her own heartbeat accelerating rapidly beneath the heavy fabric of her ballistic duty vest. This was not a hungry stray. This was a messenger, a guide, a sentient entity trying to deliver a critical, life-saving piece of information. The frantic, intense focus in the dog's eyes bypassed her rational, protocol-driven mind and spoke directly to the deep, primal, protective instinct she had nearly buried since Jace's death. "What do you need, little soldier?" she murmured, her voice barely audible. The puppy whined, a high-pitched sound of intense anxiety, then gently, yet insistently, tugged a muddy paw at her uniform pant leg, looking back at her face with a plea so powerful it transcended mere animal behavior. She scanned the desolate area again. No homes, no vehicles, no sign of human activity, just the endless, looming trees. They were clearly in a deep mountain terrain dead zone. Becca knew the departmental protocol was explicit: stay put, radio in location, and await animal control or backup. But the static hiss from the radio was a mocking testament to the failure of protocol, and the raw desperation in the dog's eyes offered a different, more powerful command. She made the unconventional, ethically justified decision. Protocol was irrelevant when a life might be at stake. She quickly grabbed her heavy-duty flashlight, checked the seating of her holstered sidearm, a Sig Sauer P229, and pushed open the door. Her heavy patrol boots landed softly on the gravel. "All right, show me, little guide," she whispered, her voice hardening with resolve. She committed the cruiser's exact GPS coordinates to her internal memory, took a final, deep breath of the cold, pine-scented air, and followed the small, desperate German Shepherd puppy into the silent, terrifying forest labyrinth. She was fully aware that she was gambling her career, perhaps her life, on the unbreakable, mysterious determination of a small dog. Stepping off the road and into the dense, rugged embrace of the woods was like entering a world steeped in perpetual twilight. The light was instantly reduced to thin, scattered golden beams that struggled to penetrate the dense canopy, dancing erratically on the thick, mossy ground. Becca's heavy patrol boots sank slightly into the damp, aromatic forest soil, rich with the scent of pine, damp decay, and a faint, unsettling whiff of something metallic. Hero, the puppy, as she mentally named him, moved with astonishing, single-minded purpose, exhibiting the focused gait of a trained working dog. He weaved skillfully between the massive, moss-covered tree trunks, pausing every 30 feet to turn back, his low, continuous whimper acting as an acoustic tether, ensuring the heavy human form was still following his desperate path. The journey became an exercise in high-stress sensory triangulation. Every sound was acutely amplified: the sharp snap of a dried twig, the nervous rustle of unseen blue jays high above, the distinct sound of her own accelerated breathing, and the persistent, excited panting of the guide. Becca fought through thorny undergrowth, her durable, abrasion-resistant uniform snagging on the rough bark and sharp needles. Her professional mind, honed by years of complex procedural investigations, began its methodical data collection. She looked for micro-evidence, snapped twigs, scuff marks, and disturbed foliage, confirming this was a non-natural path. She ran a detailed internal monologue, noting the compass direction and the estimated distance covered. About 400 yards in, near a massive, uprooted stump with soil freshly turned by erosion, she noticed the first indisputable anthropogenic signs. The ground here was relatively clear, a patch of wet, compacted mud where Hero had paused, sniffing intensely. Becca crouched low, ignoring the protesting ache in her knees. In the mud, she saw it. Faint, almost erased tire tracks, not the heavy, widely spaced knobby tires of an off-road UTV or hunting truck, but the thinner, shallower imprint of a standard sedan. The pattern was irregular, marked by slippage, consistent with a vehicle losing traction during a violent skid. More alarming were the subtle ground disturbances extending from the tire marks. Faint, uneven, shallow drag marks. They were too narrow to be a fallen log, too irregular to be animal prints, and too linear to be random. They looked precisely like something heavy and rigid had been recently dragged across the forest floor by human effort. Her police training instincts transitioned from observation to high-alert processing. This was not a lost hiker. This was a critical incident site concealed by natural topography and thick cover. The emotional weight of the place shifted from uneasy solitude to profound, actionable apprehension. She grabbed her portable radio and thumbed the transmit button again, hoping the slight change in elevation would help her break the Signal 7 dead zone. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7, Deputy Hayes. I am approximately .45 miles off Route 119, following a distressed K9 to a possible incident site. Initial observation shows faint vehicle skid marks and deliberate ground disturbance. I repeat, I have visual evidence of an incident. Requesting Signal 7 check and immediate backup. Stand by for visual confirmation. Only harsh, brittle static answered, a persistent, flat dead sound that hammered home her isolation. The forest's dense, rugged embrace had formed a complete communication blackout. She swore under her breath, securing the useless radio, knowing she was now on an unsanctioned, solo search and rescue operation. The puppy whined again, a sound now clearly laced with profound fear, and led her down a steep, treacherous, slick downhill slope. The wilderness terrain was unforgiving, forcing Becca to brace her hands on trees to maintain balance. The air grew eerily quiet, colder, and heavier, carrying that unsettling metallic scent more distinctly now, a smell Becca professionally identified as oxidized blood, faintly masked by the powerful aroma of wet earth and pine. Hiro slowed his pace, his gait becoming cautious, almost sorrowful. His fur was trembling violently, his intelligent ears low, his frantic bark reduced to a low, continuous sorrowful sound that seemed to mourn something ahead. Becca knelt quickly, checking the seating of her weapon again. She ran a reassuring, gloved hand along his quivering back. "It's okay, we're almost there," she murmured, the ritual of professional calm intended to anchor them both. She knew, with chilling certainty, that this trembling signaled they were agonizingly close to the source of his profound distress. He broke free and dashed ahead, leading her around a massive, moss-covered boulder and into a small, unexpected forest clearing. The light here was severely diminished, filtering through the thick pine needles like sickly, ineffective candlelight. And then she saw the tableau, half hidden by ferns and a patch of loose, freshly disturbed earth. The horrifying evidence of the unspeakable human tragedy instantly wiped the procedural steps from her mind, leaving only raw, visceral dread and shock. Becca stopped dead, the weight of the moment pressing her into the damp earth. The silence was absolute, a crushing, oppressive force. The metallic scent was now sickeningly strong, unmistakable beneath the forest's organic perfume. The evidence of the profound, sickening violence of neglect was starkly revealed. An overturned stroller, a cheap, plastic model, flipped onto its side. One wheel was missing entirely, and the aluminum handle was bent and twisted at an impossible angle, suggesting it had been discarded with extreme force or trauma. Dark, fresh scrapes marred the metal frame, likely from contact with rocks or tree roots during a violent impact. A small pink blanket, crumpled, torn, and heavily soaked in cold morning dew and dark mud, partially submerged near the stroller. It was clearly made of a light, synthetic material offering minimal protection against the freezing mountain air. Becca's professional detachment dissolved into a cold, immediate surge of pure, sickening dread. Distinct drag marks, consistent with the ones she had noted earlier, led from the damaged stroller toward a specific patch of freshly disturbed earth just beyond the clearing's edge. The soil there looked uneven, hastily covered, messy, evidence of rapid, clumsy action. Hiro, the small German shepherd, ran directly to that spot. He began pawing frantically at the dirt, his high, piercing whines escalating into a sound of raw, uncontrolled desperation. His frantic, undeniable action was a final, clear instruction. Becca crouched, her hands shaking uncontrollably inside her gloves, her gut twisting with immediate, overwhelming terror. As she brushed the cold, loose soil, trying to keep her breathing even, a sound pierced the oppressive silence, soft, fragile, almost impossible to register above the ringing in her ears. It was a faint, desperate, gasping human cry. "It's a baby," Becca choked out, the words trembling and thick with disbelief. The reality was so horrific, so far outside the bounds of human decency, it felt like a nightmare she had walked into. Pure, blinding adrenaline surged through her. All thought of protocol vanished, replaced by the primal, visceral need to save a life. She ripped off her gloves, dropped fully to her knees, and tore into the frozen soil with her bare hands, joining Hiro's frantic, feverish digging efforts. Dark, cold mud flew as she clawed, driven by the increasing volume of the tiny, uneven, gasping human breaths. "Keep digging. Don't stop. Find the source. Jace, help me." The mantra hammered through her skull, Jace's name a desperate prayer. Her fingers struck something soft, then slightly rigid. She cleared a final, massive handful of dirt and froze. She had uncovered a small, mud-caked edge of the pink blanket, and then, horrifyingly, a tiny, pale, frozen hand. "Oh God," she gasped, a raw, broken whisper of terror and disbelief. She gently cleared the remaining soil away from the head and chest. Working with the sudden, flawless precision of her critical emergency triage training, she carefully lifted the hypothermic, severely dehydrated infant girl, barely 4 months old, from the cold, damp ground. The baby's lips were a worrying, faint cyanotic blue, her skin mottled, her breathing perilously shallow and quick. She was alive, but agonizingly close to organ failure due to extreme cold exposure. Hiro sat back on his haunches, his tail giving a soft, tired wag, a low, exhausted whimper escaping him. His amber eyes fixed on the child as if asking, "Is the rescue finally done?" Time had collapsed into a terrifying tunnel vision focused entirely on the small, fragile life in her arms. She registered the brutal cold immediately, the kind of penetrating damp cold that kills swiftly. Ignoring the pain in her own frozen hands, she immediately ripped open the front snaps of her police uniform jacket, pulling it off. She wrapped the shivering child tightly in the heavy material, pulling the infant close against the thin cotton of her duty shirt, utilizing her own body as a vital heat source to counteract the rapid onset of fatal hypothermia. The baby whimpered, a fragile, gasping sound that tore at Becca's heart. "You're safe now, sweetheart. I've got you," Becca murmured, rocking gently. This tiny, frail life, a miracle pulled from a cold, silent grave by a dog, was fighting hard, and Becca would be her shield. She had to break the communication silence. She needed to move, now. Clutching the infant tightly, she scrambled back to the slightly higher ground. She forced herself to speak into the radio with professional authority, despite the fear thickening her voice. "Dispatch, this is Deputy Hayes, Unit 7. I have recovered a live infant, female, approximate age 4 months. Status is critical, severe hypothermia. I am moving rapidly toward the main logging track for extraction point. I am requesting immediate medical extraction, a Level 1 trauma center notification, and multiple patrol units for scene security and search for suspects or additional victims. I repeat, infant is alive but critically ill. Time is of the essence. My coordinates are." The signal held. A firm, professional voice answered. "Copy that, Unit 7. Deputy, you have full clearance. Trauma notification initiated. EMS ETA 4 minutes. 2 patrol units diverted. Stay on the move. Keep the infant warm. You did good, Deputy." The distinct, beautiful, life-saving promise of distant sirens soon began to cut through the heavy forest air. Becca clutched baby Hope, the name solidified in her mind as an oath, and began the frantic sprint back toward the main logging road. Hiro running fiercely at her side, his duty complete but his vigilance unwavering. The sound of the approaching sirens was the most beautiful acoustic experience of Becca's life. The emergency medical service, EMS, ambulance arrived, tires spitting gravel, pulling up hard beside Becca's abandoned cruiser. 2 paramedics, their movements honed by years of rural trauma experience, immediately recognized the severity of the situation. Becca refused to relinquish the infant until the lead paramedic, Kelly, was positioned and ready. Hypothermic, severely dehydrated, lips are cyanotic. Becca rattled off the critical triage data precisely. Shallow breathing, pulse is weak and thready. Found half buried. She needs heat, fast. Kelly nodded, expertly taking the child and initiating the immediate life-saving protocols. High-flow oxygen, thick thermal warming blankets, and rapid IV access to stabilize the core temperature. Becca finally allowed herself a ragged, shuddering exhale, the sudden drain of adrenaline leaving her weak and utterly shaken. Moments later, a heavy-duty county sheriff's SUV arrived, followed by a separate sedan carrying Detective Ethan Vance, a stocky, efficient investigator from the County Child Protective Services, CPS. Vance was professional, but his face was set in a skeptical mask. "Deputy Hayes," Vance said, his eyes scanning the mud on her face and hands. "Walk me through this again. You're maintaining this puppy, this German Shepherd, led you off the road, through the woods, to this exact, obscured location?" "I am, Detective," Becca affirmed, her voice recovering its strength. "He is an essential witness. He didn't just lead me, he acted with intent. I have observed faint vehicle skid marks and clear, distinct drag marks leading from the main trail into the area of the discovery. While Becca provided a meticulous K9 guide action report and details on the scene's topographical features, Detective Vance directed the newly arrived patrol units to establish a perimeter and scene security, instructing them to block off the remote logging track from public access. As the ambulance sped away toward the nearest Level 1 trauma center, carrying baby Hope and the promise of intensive care, the investigation began in earnest. Vance's forensics team, utilizing specialized gear like a portable drone for aerial mapping and ground-penetrating radar (GPR), moved methodically, establishing a precise GPS grid around the incident site. "Hayes, those drag marks you found," Vance said, pointing to the aerial photos displayed on a rugged tablet. "They lead off at a sharper angle than a simple turning vehicle. They indicate a forceful vector. We need to find the vehicle involved." A forensics officer called out from the brush near the tire marks Becca had initially spotted. "Detective, Deputy Hayes, we found this, a piece of chrome trim, torn off cleanly. Looks like a brand emblem from an older sedan. And we've got massive evidence of a vehicle deflection just beyond the bend." Following the deflected path, deeper into a particularly dense thicket, they located the devastating evidence: the twisted silver wreckage of a sedan, its front end wrapped around the trunk of a massive, centuries-old fallen pine tree. The car was crushed, its structure compromised, the shattered windshield a web of violence. The site was instantly recognizable as a high-impact, off-road collision that had occurred at speed. Becca's heart sank. It was an accident, then, she whispered, the tension draining into a fresh wave of sorrow. Not an intentional abandonment in that sense. Inside the crumpled, rain-soaked interior of the sedan, they located a purse beneath the dashboard panel. Vance used gloved hands to retrieve a driver's license. The name was Amanda Blake, 28, a single mother from a town 2 counties over. In the wallet, a small, laminated photograph confirmed Becca's earlier hunch. A young woman smiling brightly, holding a newborn, and seated beside her, the same German Shepherd puppy, Hero, who now sat patiently and solemnly outside the wreckage. She must have lost control during the storm 2 nights ago, Vance theorized, scanning the damage. The slick granite shale combined with the speed and the dark. It's a fatal combination on these mountain logging tracks. Becca walked toward the wreckage. Hero whined softly, pressing his nose against the twisted metal of the car door, an unmistakable, heartbreaking sign of sorrow and profound recognition. "She didn't abandon her, Detective," Becca asserted, tears stinging her eyes. "She did the only thing she could think of to save her from the fatal hypothermia and the storm. She was injured, concussed, and dying, but she spent her last moments protecting her child." The forensics team located a small, delicate silver charm bracelet near the driver's side door, half buried in the mud. It had 2 tiny pendants, one shaped like a heart, the other exquisitely engraved with the name Hope. "That's the baby's name," Becca murmured, the name forever linking this tragedy to the miracle of survival. The evidence confirmed Amanda Blake's final, desperate, selfless act of parental love. She had sheltered the infant in a hollow, covered her with a blanket and thin layer of earth, hoping a passerby or rescue team would find the child before the cold killed her. When she failed to wake, her loyal companion, Hero, took on her sacred mission. He walked miles of treacherous, dark wilderness, alone, injured, and terrified, searching for a human capable of intervention, a police deputy, and led her directly back to the exact, obscured spot. The bond was unbreakable, the loyalty absolute. The rain returned as the forensics team concluded the scene processing. The forest was now heavy with the profound sorrow of Amanda Blake's sacrifice. Hero sat quietly beside Becca, his fur matted and wet, his amber eyes reflecting the deep exhaustion of his ordeal. Detective Vance reviewed the final report with a solemn expression. Cause of death confirmed: blunt force trauma and subsequent severe hypothermia. No sign of struggle or forced entry. The mother likely succumbed to internal injuries shortly after the crash. The infant's survival is, frankly, statistically impossible without the dog's actions. He cleared his throat, his professional demeanor struggling with the emotional weight of the case. We need to deal with the German Shepherd, Deputy. As he's technically a stray, we'll arrange for the county animal shelter to pick him up. They'll ensure he's housed and cared for until adoption protocol is complete. Becca's head snapped up, her exhaustion instantly replaced by a fierce, protective, and unwavering determination. The memory of Jace's final, cold hand in hers flashed through her mind, the absolute helplessness. She wouldn't allow this creature, this sentinel of hope, to feel that abandonment. "No, detective," she said firmly, her voice steady and absolute, rising above the drumming rain. "That's not happening. He is not going to a shelter. He's been through more trauma than any of us. He walked out of a fatal crash, found a police officer in a complete radio dead zone, and saved a baby's life. He is not a stray. He is hero. He is a witness and an essential part of this case. And he is coming home with me." Vance paused, looking at the tiny, muddy dog, then at Becca's determined face. He saw the genuine, raw emotion, the first sign of true connection he had witnessed in her since her transfer. He recognized a fellow survivor marking a new boundary. "Deputy Hayes," he said slowly, pulling out a separate form, "county regulations require a 72-hour hold and a behavior assessment for any animal involved in a critical incident. But given his documented actions, we can expedite the K-9 witness procedure. I will personally authorize him as a temporary police ward under your immediate care. We will process the permanent adoption paperwork as soon as the mandatory hold is complete. Consider him evidence of the best possible kind." Becca exhaled a long, slow breath of profound relief mixed with sorrow. She knelt and lifted Hero into her arms. The dog immediately settled against her chest, letting out a deep, tired sigh of absolute safety and contentment. "You're safe now, little partner," she murmured, the words thick with emotion. The next few days were a blur of paperwork, emotional testimony, and necessary processing. Hero was officially designated as a key K-9 witness and placed in the personal care of Deputy Hayes. His physical examination revealed severe bruising and minor lacerations, testimony to the miles he had walked through the brush. The story of the miracle rescue puppy and baby Hope's survival exploded into national news, driven by the unbreakable K-9 loyalty narrative. Newspapers, national news anchors, and online digital media platforms universally hailed him as the most significant animal rescue story of the decade. But for Becca, it was a deeply personal salvation. She installed a soft new dog bed beside her own, bought him a sturdy new collar engraved with "Hero, Sentinel," and began the slow, arduous process of physical and emotional bonding. The hole left by Jace's death didn't vanish, but it was finally filled by a presence, a warm, steady weight that symbolized hope and redemption. While Becca focused on rehabilitating Hero, baby Hope's survival dominated local media. Against overwhelming odds, she had stabilized at the Level 1 trauma center. Doctors still marveled at the physiological resilience required to survive such a prolonged period of extreme hypothermia and exposure. They credited Becca's immediate body heat triage and, of course, the dog's timely intervention. Becca arranged for a private visitation at the hospital nursery once Hero was cleared by the vet and the legal hold was lifted. She walked into the quiet ward, Hero trotting calmly beside her on his new leash, his presence a commanding, yet gentle, force. When the tiny infant, swaddled tightly in an incubator, was brought out, the nurses watched with hushed reverence. The moment Hero approached the crib, the baby's eyes fluttered open. She let out a small, contented sound. Hero gently placed his head on the edge of the incubator, his eyes fixed on the child, an overwhelming air of protective guardianship surrounding them. "She remembers him," one of the nurses whispered, tears welling in her eyes. She must remember his heartbeats, his smell, the one constant thing beside her in the dark. Becca watched, a deep, cleansing wave of emotion washing over her. She knew the bond was real, forged in the most terrifying circumstances imaginable. Hero was the baby's first sentinel, her first protector. Becca's professional life shifted fundamentally. Her solitary rural patrol became a partnership. Hero was granted unofficial K-9 Sentinel status within the Rocky Mountain Patrol Unit. He rode shotgun in the heavy-duty cruiser, his presence a silent comfort to Becca and a curiosity to the few people they encountered on the remote logging tracks. The other deputies, initially skeptical, quickly came to respect the dog's intelligence and gentle demeanor. "You've got yourself a real partner there, Hayes," her supervisor said, clapping her on the shoulder. "He's better at sniffing out trouble than any radar." Becca began to leverage Hero's natural instincts. They focused their patrols on identifying illegal wilderness dumping sites and tracking lost hikers, simple, redemptive work that slowly healed the professional trauma of her past. She started speaking again in the past tense about Jace, but without the paralyzing emotional pain. Hero had not replaced Jace, but he had finally given Becca a new mission and a reason to trust her instincts again. She also started keeping a new journal. Not a police log, but a personal narrative detailing her new life. "I thought I came here to bury my ghosts," she wrote one night, stroking Hero's sleeping form. "I realize now, I came here to find an angel in the mud, one who showed me that true loyalty transcends species and that redemptive miracles are possible even in the deepest wilderness." The case of Baby Hope reached a gentle resolution. The legal process confirmed no immediate family was available or suitable for guardianship. After careful consideration by the Child Protective Services, the baby was placed with a loving, permanent adoptive family in a nearby, stable community. The family was fully informed of the incredible K-9 rescue story and pledged to keep the name Hope and the memory of her mother, Amanda Blake, alive. Becca and Hero were invited to a private ceremony. The new parents, overwhelmed with gratitude, understood the profound, unbreakable thread linking the deputy, the dog, and their daughter. As they left the ceremony, Becca paused. She looked at the towering, silent ponderosa pines that lined the street. The forest felt less like a tomb now, and more like a sanctuary. Years passed. Hero grew into a magnificent, sleek, powerful working German shepherd, his coat the color of dark sable. Becca had been promoted to rural patrol supervisor, but she still drove the back roads frequently, always with Hero riding faithfully in the passenger seat, his head held high, his ears perpetually scanning the Colorado foothills wilderness. Every year, on the anniversary of the rescue, the day Becca privately called the Day of the Oath, she made a pilgrimage. She drove the heavy-duty cruiser out to the specific, remote section of the abandoned logging road, parked beside the towering fallen pine tree where Amanda Blake had tragically crashed. A small, humble memorial now sat at the base of the pine. It wasn't officially sanctioned, but the local community and the patrol unit kept it pristine. A small brass plaque was engraved with the powerful words, "Amanda Blake, a mother's final vow." Faithfully witnessed by Hero. Becca would sit on the ground, leaning back against the cool bark. Hero would walk slowly to the memorial, his tail still, his nose pressed gently against the brass plaque, a silent, profound moment of respect for the woman whose sacrifice had forged their destiny. He wasn't mourning a death, he was honoring a bond. On Baby Hope's second birthday, Becca and Hero visited her family's beautiful home. Hope, now a walking, talking, energetic toddler with a fierce curiosity and bright brown eyes that reminded Becca strangely of Hero's own, rushed to the door. She bypassed all other people and toddled straight to the dog. She didn't fear him, she recognized him. She threw her small arms around Hero's neck. Hero lowered himself gently to the floor, his tail sweeping wide, his large ears perked high, accepting her embrace with an air of protective guardianship that never wavered. Becca watched, tears of pure, redemptive joy tracing paths down her cheeks. The connection was undeniable, a powerful, unbreakable thread linking the survivor and the savior, their destinies fused in the cold mud of the forest floor. The mother asked Becca to speak privately later that evening. "Becca," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "we read the reports. We know the miracle isn't just that she survived, but that he never stopped fighting for her. Thank you for making him part of her life." That night, back in her quiet, warm home, Becca sat on her porch swing, Hero's heavy, comforting head resting in her lap. The stars were brilliant above the Colorado wilds, and the only sound was the deep, contented rhythm of Hero's breathing. She opened her private journal for the final time. She wrote, not about the procedures or the trauma, but about the profound truth she had learned on the remote logging tracks. "I thought I came to the Rocky Mountain foothills to escape the memory of my partner, Jace. I thought I came here to find the solace of absolute silence. Instead, I found a deafening urgency, the desperate bark of a small, brave creature who taught me that some bonds are forged not in shared joy, but in shared sacrifice." The unbreakable K-9 loyalty of Hero was not a random act. It was the final, delivered promise of a dying mother. He delivered Baby Hope into safety, and in doing so, he delivered me back to life. Sometimes angels don't arrive with bright, majestic wings. Sometimes they come with paws, small, muddy, determined paws that carry the weight of transformative, redemptive miracles. She closed the book, stroked Hero's fur, and looked up at the cold, beautiful stars. She was no longer Becca Hayes, the grieving detective. She was the partner of a sentinel, the guardian of a promise, and she was finally, profoundly at peace. If this story touched your heart, just imagine how many more we still have to share. Subscribe to Whisker Tales, hit the bell icon, and join us for every new episode of courage, loyalty, and second chances. Because every life deserves to be remembered.